everybody. This is Tasha with Prep For It. My fantastic co-host, Miss Mouse Toes, and also Bruce from Backwoods Law. Both of their links are in the comments or in the description of this video below if you're watching this at a later time. If you're watching it now, I do have Bruce's channel link pinned. So if you're not subscribed, subscribe and hit that bell so that you can get all of the notifications. And tonight we're going to be continuing our discussion that we had from last week on home fire preparedness. But we're going to give it just a couple minutes because notifications aren't going out very well. So I'm going to brag about my camping trip, okay? Okay.
For sure.
For sure and totally. Hey, Emma, how are you, girl? It was really fun. Everybody is just genuinely just like they seem here on YouTube. Trish Wiley and Dudley from Wiley Living, and Gardner Josh and Gardner Leah and their families, and then Sandra Moody and her husband Marty. And oh my goodness, it was just so much fun. We had a great time. Love the kiddos, met them in person. Could have just grabbed them up and brought them home with me. Hey, Ginger. Hey, Morgan. Yeah, so it was a blast. We had a lot of fun. I came home all stopped up from all of the campfire smoke, but it was so worth it. Marty played his guitar and let the kids sing along with him, and he sang a few songs for us. Wow, talented man. And hopefully next year we can get more people to be able to come. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. How about y'all? How was your week?
Stupid, of course, as usual. Nothing to do. So, I'm just bumming around, getting stuff finished up in the house because we just moved in. So, going around, finding stuff that I haven't been able to find in a while. Oh, it was in that box. Okay.
Oh.
How long have you been there, Bruce?
See, we got this stuff delivered here finally at the end of June, almost 1st of July.
Wow.
Yeah, that's why I will never use pods again, the idiots. But anyway.
It's hard.
They don't have drivers is the problem. So
okay,
we waited a month without our stuff. Yeah.
Hey, Gail and CR. That was hard. Whenever we'd move, we'd make a lap over, right, where we'd have a week, and then Vert could go set up every closet with the kind of shelves we wanted. He did that kind of work. Because when you're unpacking it, you have to have a place to put it, and it's hard. And if you go from a small space where you had stuff, really strategic and put in, because, sometimes you go to a bigger place, sometimes to a smaller, and there's stuff you don't want to get rid of because basically it's for prepping or food storage. Yeah, making it yours to where you're finally comfortable, and if you want something, it's in the third drawer of the bookcase. Then you're not comfortable till that happens. But y'all like it the way your layout and stuff is?
Oh yeah, and we tripled our space because we were in a little small apartment because it was saving a lot of money in Pennsylvania. We were just in this little small apartment. We were there for almost 20 years, so we were like crunched in there like sardines, and with all the prepping stuff everywhere, of course. So when we moved to this house, it was like, oh my God, I have the entire basement to myself. It's 1,100 square feet.
Nice.
Yeah. That is awesome.
I have arrived at Terra, and it was worth it for the savings and the inconvenience to get to where you are now.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And the wife has her own washer and dryer now, which she loves. She doesn't have to share it with 3 other apartments. She hated that.
Oh, that feels good.
Yeah.
Well, epic information last week on everything related to fire. I watched it again just so I could refresh on everything. That was so good, the information you gave.
Well, hopefully we'll do as good this week too.
Yeah.
And if you guys have questions in the side chat, just put on their questions so that either one of the ladies see it or I see it and we can answer it for you.
I'll put it in caps if you will. It makes it easier to tell that it's a question for us, and because sometimes when we're involved in our combos, we don't see every comment over there, and it's easier for me to read, by the way, because I got to go get some new glasses.
And listen, we have super mod Sandra Moody, who's not only brilliant but beautiful, and she is great at not missing the questions too.
Yeah, she's awesome. Hey, Southernmost Illinois, good to see you. So I guess we'll go ahead and get started. Hopefully more people trickle in as we're going along. I thought last week's discussion was really excellent, and I learned quite a bit in there that I did not know before.
Yes.
So I'm excited to hear what you have to teach us this week, Sensei. Sensei of fire safety. Sensei.
Well, you said you had some stuff that you forgot to ask last week. So if you have some questions you want me to hit right off the bat, go ahead.
Well, we mainly talked about grease fires. We didn't really get to like electrical fires or chemical fires or things like that. Yep. So those are just some things I'd like to cover, like what the differences in how you approach them and what you use for them.
Okay, most people, what you want to do is you want to have an ABC fire extinguisher in your house. Most people get the little small ones, which is fine. But if you get like a 15 or a 20 pound one, you're going to have enough agent in there that you're going to be able to take care of whatever the issue is with that amount of agent in the fire extinguisher. You know, the smaller ones are okay if you're just trying to, you know, put something out in the engine compartment of your car. But if you're trying to put something out in your house, you want to make sure you get it out, because the longer it burns, the more money it costs you. Because the fire department still has to drive there, get people inside, and put the fire out. So if you can knock it down for them early, all they have to do is get their fans, put them in your doorway, and evacuate all the smoke out. You're good to go. You maybe have $10,000 in expense rather than $30,000.
Right.
So,
right.
ABC fire extinguishers, basically that'll cover all your paper products, plastic, stuff like that if they catch fire. Class B fire extinguisher, which is in the ABC that I said, that's for flammable liquids like gasoline, turpentine, things like that. Class C is for electrical fires with active wires.
Okay.
And the reason you want to have, they'll use like a powder or something for that. You obviously do not want to use water on electric wires. Bad idea.
Okay, that was a question I was going to ask.
Yep.
So if you have that particular type, you don't necessarily have to throw the breaker before you start using that?
No, because the Class C ones are all dry powder, or they're what's called halon, and it's not like water that's going to be thrown onto the electrical wires that could cause a spark and cause more fire.
Okay.
It's an actual chemical agent that goes out, and what it does is it sucks all the air out of the room, almost like halon does.
Oh.
So, yeah, that's if you've seen any of the ones on YouTube, those ones where they say they have a fire bomb, what it is it's basically a halon bomb, and what happens is when they throw it in the fire, the heat causes the little ball that's in there to explode, and that releases the halon, which sucks all the air out. If you have no oxygen, you can't have a fire.
Uh-huh.
So it's also important to remember that if you have one of those and you throw it in your house and there's somebody in the house and you throw it in that room, they're going to come out because they're not going to be able to breathe. There's no air.
Yeah. We have a question. Emma 3010 wants to know, will ABC fire extinguishers work for grease fire in the kitchen?
Yes, they will. You have to be very careful when you're using a fire extinguisher, though, because you do not want to spray it so that you're spraying that burning oil onto your wall or onto your stove, whatever it's burning on. Because the fire extinguisher is under air pressure. So if you just squirt that directly at grease, it's water to do, you squirt air on it.
It's like pushing a pool outward. Yeah.
So you got to be very careful. If you have a regular dry fire extinguisher and you're going to use it for that, just make sure that you start off and point like just to the right of your pan so that you know how much air you have flowing, so that you don't put it directly down into the pan and cause all that oil to splatter everywhere. Because if it's on fire and you splatter it, you're going to spread the fire everywhere that goes.
Yeah, that would be no good. Yeah.
See, and that's not a common sense thing. You just think, oh, I'd open it up, not realizing it's going to go out on your countertops, everything. That is not common sense. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things that a lot of kitchen fires that we would end up getting called to. It was because there was like they were doing bacon or something like that, and they had a lot of grease in the pan, and it was smoking, and then it caught fire and lit up, and they, panicked immediately because you're not used to that happening. So I can understand somebody panicking. But if you panic and you spray it everywhere, now you've got the fire spread to like 15 different places.
Yeah.
And you're trying to put it out everywhere, and your little fire extinguisher may not have enough extinguishing agent in it to get all those little spots everywhere.
Yeah. Gil with Camp Patton Family Compounds said to stand 5 to 7 feet away from the pan.
Yeah, what we train when we're in the fire service, if we train people how to use fire extinguishers, typically we'll tell them to stand 10 to 12 feet away, because at that point the air compressed in the fire extinguisher when you're shooting the agent is small enough that even if you spray it directly at the pan, it's not going to do anything. But it depends on the size of your kitchen also.
Right.
You may not have 12 feet to get away from your
Right.
oven.
Right. But just as far away as you can get up to 12 feet, correct?
Yeah, because when it comes out of that hose, it will squirt like 20 to 30 feet. So
yeah, it has.
Don't worry about I'm too far away.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that information. That's great information. What is a good size for kitchen? Mine says gross weight 3 pounds.
That's probably what's called a 5-pound extinguisher. It's probably one of the cylindrical bottles, small cylindrical bottle. What we would tell people when we went on fire safety things, like we'd go to the rest homes and stuff, when we go there, we would tell all the people there, if they had like a little kitchenette thing in their room, we would tell them to get a 20-pound fire extinguisher. Now that sounds like a lot, but it's not super heavy. And you should be able to hold it, because you don't have to hold it up by your chest to use it. You just have to hold it down by your knee and then squeeze it is all you have to do. And then you can move the hose left and right in order to get out whatever fire you're trying to attack. So 20-pound fire extinguishers have enough agent in them that just about every fire that you're going to run into in your house, if you have a 20-pound fire extinguisher, you can put out just about all of them so that there's no extra damage. Fire department gets there, evacuates all the smoke, and they say, hey, you were a smart person. You had a fire extinguisher. Good job. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. So what does somebody do if they come across an electrical fire and they do not have a fire extinguisher on hand, which we as preparedness people should, but if we don't, then what?
Okay, depending on where the fire is, if it's at the electrical box, get the hell out of there. Because you're not going to be able to do anything. If you have a fire, say, in your kitchen that's an electrical fire because you overloaded a plug or something, started a fire in your wall, first thing is to de-energize the line. So run out to wherever your box is, your electrical box, turn off that extension so that there's no more electricity going through there, so you don't continually have sparks going and catching fire inside your wall, which is a very bad thing. Because when we come in as firefighters, we have to tear the wall open in order to fight the fire.
Yeah.
Oh.
And that's a lot of extra expense when you have to go to repair it later, too.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see.
By the way, with that type of fire, you want to use a Class C fire extinguisher, or one of the multi-rated, the ABC. Because if you put water on an electrical fire, you're going to make it 10 times worse, and it's going to start sparking and popping. And depending on what type of extinguisher you're using, if you're using just a regular water pressure one, WP, it could actually have enough conductivity that it'll take the electricity back to the fire extinguisher that you're holding and shock you.
Yeah. And what happens, just say somebody does get shocked trying to fight this fire, because you have a medical background as well, what were you trained to do if you come across an electrical victim?
Well, number one, the first thing you have to do, like I said last week, is you got to look around, make sure you're not going to become another victim. If he's electrocuted, was it because a wire came down from the ceiling? Because you don't want to walk in there trying to rescue him, knock into that wire, and now you're electrocuted laying next to him. That's a bad move. Yes. Now both of you got to be rescued, so it takes 4 firefighters out of the rescue. Yeah. So what I would do if I saw someone laying on the ground, after I clear, make sure I'm not going to get electrocuted or something on my own, I go over there, rub your knuckles of your fist onto their breastbone in the center of their chest, and say, hey, are you okay? Are you all right? And do it hard enough so that, it's going to hurt. Right. Because if they're awake at all, doing that is going to make them conscious. They're going to wake up and they're going to look at you. Hey, stop that. You know,
Yeah.
that hurts.
Right.
And that's why you do that.
Right.
So that's what I would initially do. And if they're unresponsive, then my main priority is to get them out of the fire, make sure they're not going to get burned or die because of smoke inhalation. And so I would immediately get their arms, drag them out on their back. You don't have to pick them up. Firefighters, yeah, sometimes we'll pick them up because maybe we have to get them out of there in a hurry because the room's getting ready to flash. So we don't want to have to drag them out. You know, that's the slowest way you can do it. But even a woman, most of the time, can drag somebody, even if they're a lot larger than them, out of a door and get them out of the immediate danger of the fire.
Yeah.
And then once you get them outside, then, you know, we've got all of our trauma kits, all of our trauma bags and everything. They're sitting outside in case one of our firefighters get hurt. So you just drag them out the door, and the other firefighters outside that are fighting the fire from the outside, they'll see you drag somebody out, and instantly everybody will come over and they'll be like hawks on you. What's going on? What happened to him? So that's what I would suggest. If you find somebody that's just passed out on the floor, number one, make sure you're not going to get injured too. Number two, make sure that you check, rub their breastbone with your knuckles and check to see if they're conscious at all, because if they're conscious, it's not as serious as if they're not conscious.
Right.
That doesn't hold true for everything, absolutely. But normally, if a person is conscious, they're able to control their own blood pressure, they're able to control their own heart rate and their breathing. So that takes a lot of things out of the way that you don't have to worry about further down the line if they're awake and conscious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are most, when it's an electrical fire in the wall, is that from aluminum wiring or older places, Bruce? Or can that be because you overloaded something and your breaker didn't throw itself?
The ones that I have seen happen are usually in the older houses. It's because they have the old tar and paper wire, number one, which the paper that's around the tar catches fire very easily. Normally, those wires are usually in the 90 to 100-year-old range, so they're very brittle. So that can be very easy to catch fire. And the other thing is with the aluminum, yes, if you overdraw a outlet with aluminum wiring, it is very easy for aluminum wiring to overheat to the point where it'll actually spontaneously combust inside of its insulators.
Right.
So
and you said last week that also the mice like to chew on that paper, on those older wires.
Yeah.
So which exposes those wires and makes them more likely to arc, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
And the other problem with an older house like that is usually you have the screw-in type of fuses in the box. You don't have the breakers. Those screw-in fuses, a lot of times what will happen is if you have a problem with one that's tripping all the time and blowing the fuse, rather than people calling an electrician or somebody that knows something about electricity and getting it fixed, they'll pop that out of there and they'll pop like a penny or a quarter in there. So you no longer have a fuse, which would have stopped the fire from getting as big as it is. And getting bigger.
See, I've
because
seen
you still
on
have
old
electricity going.
I've seen on old movies people doing that, and now that makes sense. That makes perfect sense.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's dangerous. Please don't do that, people. Just, if at all possible, just get it fixed correctly. It's not worth your lives. It's not worth your family's lives.
That's scary to even think about rigging something like that when you can't tell me you can't carry your toaster into another room, right? Set it at another plug or something. Yeah, that is downright frightening. And if it's somewhere like Philadelphia where houses are close to each other, you're risking everybody on each side of you too.
Row houses, if you can avoid living in a row house is the worst place you can live. Because a person that lives 8 doors away from you has a fire that starts in their house, and typically what happens is the fire will climb all the way up to the roof, and once it's in the roof, then it can spread laterally. And then it'll go down and it'll catch every single house on fire, and it'll burn down from the roof.
Yeah, that's one reason why I'm grateful we live out in the country. The nearest house is probably not quite 3/4 of a mile across the road, up the driveway and across the road, or to the north of us or to the south of us. So it's like there's a lot of space between, but there's still a lot of grass. So that doesn't help. It's very flammable. So,
if it gets dry, you got a problem in Oklahoma. I know that.
Yes.
Yes, and we've gotten a little bit of rain here lately, but we're needing more because it's pretty close to drought conditions again. Okay.
feeds it, right? Because you have a lot of wind.
Yeah, we don't have any kind of wind breaks. Trees are
Right.
good and they're bad, like we talked about last week. If they're all piled up one right after another, and especially if there's something like pine or something like that with a lot of terpenes, it's very flammable. But a windrow is nice because it's not, if it's far enough away, it kind of blocks the wind. So if there's a fire that starts between that windrow and your home, it's not going to spread as quickly because the wind isn't getting in there as easily and pushing it your direction. But so there's pros and cons, but we just have to do what we can here. Go ahead, Mel.
Okay, I wanted to, and remember, me and Tasha aren't talking over each other. We're DSL lag people, so we're not being rude to each other, I promise you. Is when we were talking about propane last time, I managed apartments, and when we lived in apartments, we didn't want to live in the real pretty wood ones. They're made of wood, and they did them in decorative things. Well, right down the hill from us, and ours were aluminum wiring. So I always had maintenance to, when you're flipping the unit and going to paint it, pull off those switch plates, and then got an investors on a thing where we actually had them rewired, one building at a time. And so the investors hated that, and I finally finished the last one. Just down the hill from us were these beautiful townhouses around the lake. And it was always, at that time, you could have singles only. So it was Partyville, but it was beautiful. And one day they were shooting fireworks at each other on July 4th or Christmas, I forget, and somebody was grilling. And you had talked about the issues with propane. Yep. Well, it ignited and blew up that propane tank, and they had not, we called it retrofitting, and we had already done all the fire breaks in our attic of our older complex. And so the firefighters go into that unit, right, because they're townhouses, they go from the parking lot right to the lake, they bust through and go, and they look up, and the entire roof was on fire because they had evidently paid somebody off and made it look like they'd done those breaks in the attic, and it burned down 38 apartments. 38 apartments.
I believe it. Once you get fire traveling laterally inside of a roof like that, because there's all the dry wood that's in a roof, it's just ready to light off like that. So if you get fire running laterally in a roof, that's bad mojo. Yeah. And that's what happens a lot. You'll see it in Philadelphia. You don't see it as much in the Pittsburgh area, but they do have row houses in Pittsburgh. And when one of them catches, you'll see they'll send like 40 fire trucks, even if it's only one building that's on fire, because they know all of the roofs are connected all the way down. It's this row house structure. And one place being on fire in that without the fire breaks in between, which, I mean, they can't force anybody to do that because that's the way they were built back in the day in the 40s and 50s. So, would it be great if everybody would build the breaks in? Yeah, because then it's got to burn through an actual sheet of plywood before it can go to the next house. That gives the firefighters time to get there, get up to the attic, and actually cut vent holes, put water on it, and get the fire knocked down before it goes to the next house and destroys their roof.
Yeah.
It's interesting that they don't make them do it but we're not as densely populated with row houses in South Carolina, but they made it the law. We had 3 years to do it. And of course we did ours. But I just cannot imagine losing that many homes and that many people with nowhere to live. And being young people, they didn't have renter's insurance.
Yeah.
Of course not.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thankful that we've had renter's insurance. We've never had to use it yet, but it's really inexpensive, people. It really is. Ours is only like $23 a month, and that is including all of the external buildings, including the barn that has all of my husband's.
Yes.
I don't know how many thousands of dollars worth of tools out there. Yeah, mechanics tools and stuff, and his welder and his grinder and his plasma torch and all of that. So it's well worth it. If you can afford it, you need to do it. Real quick, Mouse Toes, BC is in the house.
Yes, I said our hottie is here. The man who makes knives, loves his bride, can fix up anything, okay? Like could take a hut and make it into a mansion is here. And just so all you girls know, he is Tasha and mine. So we're not
You can't have him, man.
That's right. He's ours.
Oh, Lordy.
Yeah, there's just some people who do anything. He's one of those.
Yeah, he's one of those. We claim him as our own.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep. So, Bruce, and then another type of fire, which we talked a little bit backstage, is chemical fires. Like if there's things that can happen in the shop, like my husband's shop or in a garage or whatever, or maybe just where you're storing your chemicals in your house, like your cleaning chemicals or spray paint or things like that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, the chemical fires you got to be very careful of, especially as a person that's living in the house and you're going with a fire extinguisher, because you don't have any kind of respirator on. As a firefighter going in, if I splash it with water and it sprays all over the place, I've got bunker gear on from head to toe, so I'm covered up, so it's not going to burn me in that way. And I'm not going to inhale the fumes because I've got a SCBA on providing air for me. You as a homeowner, if you're trying to put it out with a fire extinguisher and you just spray it and it goes splashing everywhere, number one, you could spread the fire if that's what's on fire, or secondarily, the heat from the fire could actually be releasing toxic fumes from whatever the cleaners are, and you're standing there inhaling them, and that can cause you to pass out in the hallway. And then the firefighters at least know where the fire is because you're passed out there. Oh, that must be where it is. So when they come in, but they got to get rid of you first. They got to take you out of there so that you're not in the way when they hit it with the water from the hose. Because if anybody's in that house when there's an active fire and we hit it with one of our hoses, they get lobster fried. So that's not a good thing. We always ensure that the house is clear before we do anything with water. Because as soon as you hit it with water, it's like you just put them in a steam bath. Yeah. And they cook up. They're red and they're cooked. No good.
Yeah, and not just that, but if you're storing multiple types of chemicals together, if those bottles are opening up, like maybe they're melting and it spills together, it can create some pretty, like if you're storing chlorine and vinegar, the same, isn't that chlorine gas that happens whenever those combine?
That actually makes phosgene, I believe, which is
phosgene.
That's a very bad biological chemical that the military uses to do what's called area avoidance. So that you spray an area with phosgene gas and nobody can go in there unless they're in a full biological chemical suit. Because if it gets on your skin, it eats your skin away. If it gets in your lungs, it eats your lungs away. So it's very nasty stuff, and it's bad stuff. Firefighters hate it too. Because if you get those two combined and you make phosgene, it's very bad. Because it can start working on our face masks, which are made out of plastic. It can actually start eating those away.
Wow.
So you got to keep an eye on each other. You're constantly looking at each other, making sure that your mask is not eating away and bubbling. Because if it is, you got to get the hell out of there right now.
Wow.
Because all of a sudden you lose seal on your mask and all the smoke rushes in and you pass out on the ground because you got smoke inhalation now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's amazing to think of how fire departments learn this from what bad experiences, Tasha.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how everything is learned in the fire service, is because somebody's died from it before.
Yes.
When we were going through fire school, they stressed that on us. You know, we're not just telling you this because we're scared. We're telling you because this has killed firefighters before. That's why you have to listen to us. If you see the situation, you go in, you turn around, go right back out, tell the officer, hey, this situation exists, and they will get everybody out of the building.
Yeah. Okay, we have a question. Bernice Balby asks, what is the proper way to deal with a microwave that is sparking? Well, I mean, if it's sparking because you've got silverware in there or a piece of foil, just turn it off, right?
Yep. But the other thing is if it's, even if that's the reason with silverware in there, or you put a tin pan in there and you just weren't thinking, you started it and it's sparking everywhere, go turn it off at the actual box.
Right.
You should have them marked. Now, they're not always marked, but it's a good idea to know what in your kitchen is on what breaker. So that if you have a problem with that, like if you have an electric stove and you've got something that's boiling over and it's creating sparks for some reason because it's getting into the electrical wiring of the actual stove, you want to know which one turns my stove off so that you can immediately turn it off and stop that fire from progressing.
Right.
And even in rental apartments, if you live in an apartment complex, if you go to your breaker box, it's usually right there in your kitchen, right with your pantry over it for your canned goods and a water heater. If you'll just put in a work order asking them to label, maintenance men are more than happy to come and do that. And so that they
and
can
even if
label.
they're not, make them anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, but usually they're happy to do it, because it helps them. And then just like him saying, go and throw that breaker when you can clearly see it,
Yeah.
it helps a lot. And something we were talking on they were talking, the panel was Southern Ohio Prepper, about the trucker shortage and the backups in California, was the government being interested in hiring very young people, like 18, to drive trucks. And I'm thinking, what are they going to haul? Canned goods? Because there's so much complicated information they have to learn, right, Bruce, with the triangles on the back. So that if you come on it as fire department, you have to know what's in that tank that they have or what goods they're carrying. Part of that safety for everybody. It's like when you get a new traffic light somewhere, it's because X amount of people died at that intersection and it qualified. And Bruce saying it's how they learned the safety things for fire was someone died from that. They hadn't experienced it before.
And the thing is in the fire service, everything's always a hard lesson, because in Pennsylvania, we have the most volunteer fire companies in the entire country. But all the fire instructors that we had, some of them were even career firefighters, and there have been fire instructors that have died during training because things have happened. And because they were a career firefighter, they thought they could do more than the volunteer firefighter, so they stayed in too long, or they were too close to the fires that we would do inside of burn buildings, and it would melt their mask. And once your mask melts, you're done.
Yeah.
My mind is still blown from when you talked about last week, and you touched on it just now, that I thought you just didn't want to knock victims down with the hose and the pressure in it. Instead, you don't want to boil them. That is just mind-blowing.
Yeah. On marking your breaker boxes, too, use a permanent marker, not pencil. Pencil fades. So use a permanent marker and cover it with some kind of tape or something, that, like clear tape that will stay on there. Hello, Heirloom Permaculture and Preparedness. Welcome. Good to see you. So what are some other things that you can do, Bruce, as far as a chemical fire, like in your shop or in the garage?
Those are the nasty ones, and those are the ones really that you should let the professionals that have been through fire school for 12 weeks, have been trained on it, and we're trained in hazardous materials, deal with those. You do have, like if you have metals that are reactive, and we had a actual company that was about a quarter mile from where our little town was, and they had reactive metals that were in there. So if we came in as a fire department and that building was on fire, it had big signs on it that said no water, and they had the hazmat signs that are a W with a line through it that lets us know, do not spray water in here even if this place is on fire, because what happens, some chemicals, when you add water to them, it's what's called an oxidizer, and it will make the fire grow 2 or 3 times as large in a very short period of time, just because you put the water on there. So the metals and things like that, you want a Class D fire extinguisher. So if you're doing a lot of work in your shop, in your house, and you're working on your car a lot, and you have a lot of metal shavings that are getting down on the floor, if you're not sweeping those up on a daily basis, you want to make sure that you have a Class C fire extinguisher, Class D fire extinguisher that's in there. Because a lot of times, I guarantee you, if it's going to start, it'll start near where there's an electrical outlet, a extension cord or something. So you want to have a Class C, Class D, so that you can attack both sides of that fire at the same time and try and put it out.
And you said that just like my husband might be out there grinding something down, and then he might light his torch to fit something properly, or to bend a piece of metal or whatever, and just the metal in the air and the dust from the metal in the air can spark off. So keeping that stuff cleaned up, keeping the chemicals and things in a metal cabinet like my husband does in our barn. Most of the chemicals are in a metal cabinet. That way if sparks fly, there's a barrier between the chemicals and what he's doing. We have a quick question. Emma 3010 wants to know, do fire departments do training for the public?
They will do training. I mean, you're not going to get training like the firefighters have. They will teach you some basic things, like to make sure you have the baking soda and not the flour sitting next to the stove, so that you don't create an explosive fire on your own trying to put the pan fire out. You know, you throw flour on it. Flour is combustible if it's in the dust format. So they will teach you things like that. And a lot of times the volunteer fire departments, sometimes the career fire departments will do it too. If you have a question at your house, they will come out, they will do a fire inspection of your house and let you know this could be an issue, this could be an issue. And if a firefighter tells you this could be an issue, take it as, okay, when we come here for a fire, it's going to be because of this. And we know that because we've seen this 100,000 times already.
Right.
That's why they're telling you it could be an issue, because they can't legally say, okay, you're going to have a fire, because they're not the PhD expert, but they're the ones that go in and fight fires every day.
Yeah.
So doing a good inspection of your home, maybe doing, finding a fire home checklist for fire threats or possible causes of fires would be great to go through your home. And another thing, Kaylin mentioned that even ink products, if writing your labels in ink can still fade over time. Here's my suggestion. Once you do get those labeled, make a chart of your breaker box and write everything down and laminate it and put it in your home management book. Scan that chart into your computer so you have it and you can print it off for future use if that laminated chart fades out. You still have a backup so you can relabel as you need to. That would be my suggestions. If
everybody would do that, that would be great, because we could roll up on a fire scene and everybody would have marked, okay, I got my chemicals here, I got my ammunition here, I've got electrical panel here. So we would know going into the house, because we've never been in your house before. A lot of times we're going in there blind because there's a fire going. So we've already cut the electricity, we've turned the gas off, and we're making sure we're doing everything we can to protect ourselves. But if you had a book like she's showing you right there, just a little 1-inch ring binder that you can hand to the chief and say, this is my house.
Yeah, this is a 3-ring binder, but this is a full home management type thing that of forms and things that I've gathered over the years. Put emergency numbers in there. This is one way, like if there's an emergency, you can just grab this and go, and it'll already have numbers to all the different places. It'll have charts. It'll have a diagram of your home, all of that in there to help whatever emergency services is going in.
Yeah, and if it has your fire insurance for your house in there, that makes it much easier, because the chief can get on the phone to dispatch, have dispatch call that insurance company, and whoever they want to come out to start remediating the fire, they can usually call them from the dispatch center so that they're already en route to start taking care of what's happening with your house. Yeah. So let's say it was during the winter and there's a big rainstorm or snowstorm coming and you have a hole that just burned through your roof. Well, they will come out there and they will bring fire restoring companies with them, and they'll put a tarp over that hole so that you had a fire. But if you have water damage on top of that, that a lot of times can be twice as much cost for the insurance company as the fire was.
Yeah. I have and I have a video on this. I have all of our emergency papers in this, and it's just like a water resistant. It's supposed to be fireproof, but I say fire resistant because it's not going to, depending on how hot the fire is. But let me show y'all just a little bit of this real quick. It has the flap over the top that's Velcro, and then this unzips. And then I have my little folders, like here's our life insurance policies in this folder. And then I have like our educational certificates and things like that in another one. So I have our other insurances in another one. And I have like our important papers, like our birth certificates, Social Security cards, all of that kind of stuff in another one. So this is really easy. Like whenever I go down to the cellar, this is already ready to go. Now this can stay in our safe. It's small enough and compact enough it can stay in our safe. So I could grab this and that home emergency thing and tuck it in here if I wanted to and be right out the door.
Yep.
So it's real quick and easy. So,
and that's a good idea to have it that way, because if a fire does start in a house, it's not something you planned for.
Right.
I hope you didn't.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
And also,
when it happens, you just need to be able to grab, run, and get out of there. Because the most important thing is to get yourself out of there, so that 5 or 6 firefighters don't have to go into the house chasing after you to try and save your life. And
because you're trying to find all of your important stuff. And also, this could be in the safe. If I have time to grab it, I can. But if not, it's in the safe. We have several barriers. The safe is supposed to be very fireproof or fire resistant, but it's not water resistant. So any important papers can get wet in there, as I was told by a very smart fire person. So so the water can get in there. It is permeable. So that's why I got this. I can still store this in there. I'm going to be less likely to stress about this if I have to get out fast and can't get to this. So I highly suggest this. It's really not that expensive. I ordered that on Amazon along with the rubber band folders, that are bright colored, different colors for each kind of a thing. So it's real quick and easy to see. Plus, it's all right there if something happens to us, and family can grab it easily, like our life insurance and stuff. So it's all in one space.
That's essentially part of your go bag, get out bag.
Exactly.
And if you practice on that, right, that it's just, like muscle memory to grab it.
I've had a lot of practice with the tornado emergencies. Like,
Yes, you have.
We get a tornado, a supercell heading our way. Tornado could drop out of that at any time. We just went to the cellar the other night, just last week. So I grabbed my medicine bucket that's in a carry bucket. Everything's all right there. So all I got to do is grab these 2 things and head down to the cellar. So it just makes it that much faster, So
I see a question from Klingon Princess there, saying is storing the ammo in metal cans in their boxes safest. That's a double-sided sword. Yes, it is, but remember, heat is transferred through metal. Ooh. So if you have a fire that's in the same room as where your ammo is being stored, make sure you let the fire department, when they get there, know that. Either the officer that's on the fire truck or the chief that drives up in a little personal vehicle, let them know that. Let them know, say, hey, the back bedroom on the right side is where the ammo is stored, and that's where the fire is.
Yes, that's what our little fire department already knows. This corner of the house where we have our safe, this is where we want them to, and our important papers and stuff, this is where we want them to concentrate first, as long as everybody's out of the house. This corner first. This is the most important area. And then after that.
And typically with a fire chief, if he knows there's an explosive danger that's in the house, like ammunition, what he's going to do is he's going to immediately have somebody go back there, break a window on that room, and take a 3-inch hose and start dousing that room with water so it will not catch on fire. Because the last thing he wants is, bullets to be flying everywhere through the house while he's got firefighters in there trying to fight a fire. Because you're not going to really hear it that much when you're in the fire. You're not going to hear the rounds going off. The guys outside it'll sound like a little pop, like from an air gun. Right. And that's when all the firefighters usually hit the ground. They're like, uh-oh, there's ammo in there. And everybody freaks out.
True, Emma. Some of that information could be put on a disc and put into a safety deposit box. Caitlin wants to know, would that hold true for BBs stored in ammo cans? No, they don't have the gunpowder with it, so that's not as big of a deal. They would
if you have CO2 cartridges for the BB gun, you need to be careful of those, because those will actually explode with the heat of fire.
That's true, but they have pressure. They have
fire
pressure.
To spread. Right.
Yeah.
Now, I'm glad to learn that, because I just got a bunch of those new, and I had no freaking idea of that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And if there's a fire in the room where you have that and all those pop off at the same time, now you have CO in the room, and it could leak into your room, your bedroom or something. If it happens at night, you don't realize it. Boom. You now have carbon monoxide or dioxide poisoning.
Yeah. I don't live with either of those.
Yeah.
No, they're not fun.
Are they okay outside when it's, I mean, maybe people don't leave them outside if they live a place below 32 degrees normally.
Yeah, I wouldn't leave them outside if you go down below freezing, just for the simple fact that it can make the steel brittle and maybe the top cracks off of it. But you're normally okay if you're outside, like in a tin shed or some type of exterior building that you have. You put them in there, you should be fine.
Yeah.
Just remember that you have them in there, so that if you go in there and you go in and you start to feel a little lightheaded, that's probably CO that you're breathing in. So you need to remember that those are in there, back out of there, so that you don't become a casualty.
Right. Because they're ideal to use a little BB gun with big plastic things to take out a mink, a problematic squirrel. You know what I mean? And they're okay. Geesh. See, I learned something just like from last Wednesday. It's mind blowing.
Yeah.
Well,
and Threads and Jars, we addressed, sorry, Bruce, a second. Threads and Jars, we addressed the grease fire last week on our show. If we have time, we'll go back over that this week. So I'm not sure what else Bruce has. And if y'all have any questions, please put them in caps over here and we'll get them shot Bruce's way.
Yeah, what I was going to suggest is if you guys have a question about something specific that we haven't gone over, try going to the NFPA site. If you just type into Google NFPA, that's National Fire Protection Association. They're the ones that license firefighters. Like my certification's from NFPA, IFSAC, which is the two international agencies that certify firefighters. So if you go and you search on that, it should take you right to their spot. You go in there, and if you have a question, you type it in the search bar, it's going to come up. If you have a question about some type of chemical that you have at your house, you type it in, say, is there a fire hazard? They'll bring it up. They'll show you what the fire risk is, what the fire hazard is, what to do if it is on fire or near a fire, all of that.
Wow, that is a good site to have.
That is awesome. And BC, I think if you had a fire, I'd probably want to move out of the country just to be on the safe side, because I know you. I know you too well, mister.
He said his wife would wrestle away the fire hose just to soak down her sewing room. It'd be the only spot.
I could see her doing that too. I sure could.
Yep.
That's wild.
Oh my goodness.
Informative to get this information. The only thing we didn't talk about last week, I think, was dryers. You know, your flexible vent, the only thing you get in an apartment, that sort of thing. And we had a fire chief who basically was towards Mount Pleasant of South Carolina, and the call came through, and it was his address, and one of the firemen recognized it, and his wife turned on the dryer and went and laid out at the pool.
Oops.
I will not leave this house with I won't leave it with my washer running, right? Because what if a hose breaks or whatever, and I come back, I got wood floors, I'm a raised house, and I've got it. But how the importance of checking just that little flexible thing that you're limited to in some rentals.
Yeah, a big thing, fires that start are from either the lint or the lint trap, because the lint trap, especially if you use fabric softeners and things like that, it builds up on that little mesh and you don't realize it, and it's not getting enough oxygen flow through it. This is what I understand. Correct me if I'm wrong, Bruce. But you're not getting enough oxygen flow through that, and then you can get fires that way because it overheats. So a good thing is to take it out every once in a while and put it in hot water with some vinegar and like a really soft toothbrush, and just go back and forth on it and wash that off really well, and then rinse it really well, and that'll help. It's kind of like your hair when you use conditioner too much, and then it kind of creates a buildup. That's kind of what it's like on those vents. And then people that just too lazy to clean the lint out of their lint trap. You've got to clean it out.
Lint trap also that a lot of people don't realize it's on their dryer. After you go through that connected pipe, wherever it connects to the wall and goes through the wall, usually there's a filter that's inside of that cap right there. So you need to go and clean that too. That's where a lot of fires start, is right there. And then they go right up into the actual building itself, because it cuts through the entire wall. And then it goes up, catches all the fiberglass insulation on fire, and that goes like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And Sandra had a question. Oh, I'm sorry, Mouse. You can go ahead.
The other thing on a dryer, like I have dryer sheets, but I don't put them in my dryer. I use them when I cook something, like I've soaked something in a big stock pot, and then I want to soak it overnight. And I fill it with hot water and dishwater, and then I lay that dryer. I will not put one of those in my dryer, because an apartment did that. They actually showed the amount of film, the invisible film that could build up, and it freaked me out. And it's just one more expense I don't need. You know what I mean? To add to doing laundry. So, that was good. Sorry, Tasha.
Question about the gun safes.
Yes.
You can store ammo in there, and that's fine, but realize that the gun safe is made out of steel. It is still going to transfer heat. And
right.
If you look at your gun safe, it's typically rated for a time period, and that's if it's in the middle of an inferno fire, your entire house is on fire, they'll be rated for like 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. But that's why it's important if you have stuff in a gun safe, because you're not going to pull the gun safe out before the fire department gets there. Those things are way too heavy. I know.
Right.
So you just need to make sure you tell them which room it's in and if they have a window access to it, because the first thing they'll do is knock that window in. They will start pouring water onto it and dousing it so that it will not get so hot that the ammunition cooks off inside of it.
Yeah.
Jeez. And at least if it's in a safe, you'd be able to tell the fire department, right? My safe is right there outside my kitchen or something.
Yeah.
Right. That's very important for them to know, because even if you only have your firearms in there and not ammunition, think about it. A lot of people, they're going to have their firearms that they're going to use for self-defense in their house in there, so they're going to be preloaded.
Yes.
That cooks off. They can still cook off even though they're in a gun. And then they'll be shooting out at the speed they're intended to go, because they got the rifling in the barrel, and then they'll shoot out, go right out of the safe, and start bouncing around where all the firefighters are. That's bad mojo.
Very bad mojo, bro. Jeez, see, all us Southerners, our firemen are worried about all our ammo, and most of them know what we have. It's got together. Oh, that's funny.
Yep, and Ginger's right. Any of the chemicals that are in those dryer sheets absorb into your skin. So,
and the other thing is if you use fabric softener on like your baby's onesies or whatever, that actually makes their onesie no longer fire retardant, because the softeners actually break down the chemical agents that are in the clothing to keep it fire retardant. They break it down and they actually make it combustible. A lot of people don't realize that, because they like the smell of it. They want it to be nice and fresh for their kid. Well, guess what? That actually makes it more susceptible to catching fire.
Remember, the clothing industry had to change everything for children's clothing to make them more fire retardant.
Yeah.
That's just crazy. That is excellent information to have, because if usually children's things are soft anyway, who would wash their kids' onesies with like rough sweaters of the dads or something? It's like, I just don't think fabric softener is necessary. But I'm also on a septic tank, and that builds up a layer of scum in it
also,
too.
Also remember, as an adult, if you have on clothes that you did that were in the dryer that had the softener on them, your clothes are going to be much more susceptible to catching fire. They will combust a lot quicker because of all that fabric softener that's on it. It is very combustible.
Wow.
And that's how a lot of people get caught. They think, oh, well, I can go over with my fire extinguisher, put this fire out. They get within 10 feet of it, and it's so hot, the radiant heat from it actually ignites their clothes.
Yeah.
People don't think about radiant heat. That is something that we have to deal with as firefighters, because you go in and you got a well-seated fire that's in a room with a lot of plastics and stuff. It gets up to 1,200, 1,300 degrees, and all of that heat is radiating at you when you're trying to fight the fire. So you can easily end up with, like, we would come out of a fire and around our eyes where we didn't have anything protecting us, just a mask. You'd come out and you would have like a sunburn all the way around your eyes because of the radiant heat from the fire. It just cooks your skin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Remember People don't think about radiant heat.
Yeah, mousse and hair gel, and girls, Southern girls being at a fireplace or something, at a bonfire, and their hair went up. That is an extremely good point.
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, just the hand sanitizers. We're in the land of hand sanitizers these days, and people don't think.
Don't leave them in your car.
Thank you.
Especially laying up on the dashboard where the sun can shine through them and heat them up. And
because think about what the glass is. It's just like a magnifying glass sitting right down onto alcohol. Do you really want that? Alcohol heats up quickly. Boom, it explodes and sprays all over your car and starts your entire car on fire. People found that out the hard way this past summer.
Yes.
Yeah. Vinegar does work as a fabric softener. You put it in the rinse cycle in your washing machine, and then you can use the wool balls in your dryer to help with the static cleaning, and it also helps soften and fluff up your clothes.
If you're on a well, you want to use vinegar that is your bleach also, because if you use bleach on well water, your whites will gray.
Yeah.
It's very interesting because, it's hard water. It's got some iron and stuff in it.
Yeah.
And Sandra asked, would the liquid fabric softener be bad also? Yeah, because that goes in your washer, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Bruce?
Yeah, the liquid fabric softeners are just as dangerous and lethal to the clothing as the fabric sheets are. It doesn't differentiate at all, because what it does is it changes the chemical structure of the fabric in order to soften it a little. And when it does that, that creates a susceptibility to actually combusting easier.
Okay, Fish has had an incident. Can you read that, Tasha, to Bruce?
I accidentally put those smelly fabric softener beads in my dryer. They melted into the lint. Chutes and ladders almost burnt the dryer up. Oh.
Fishes is dangerous, Bruce. Dangerous. God.
Yeah, those little fragrance beads, if you don't see it and you put it into your dryer, I would be worried about that, because once it goes into the dryer and melts in the dryer, then where is it going throughout the dryer? That could create an issue for you later on, where the dryer catches on fire because there's some plastic that leaked somewhere from those and now is causing friction to be somewhere where it shouldn't be, and all of a sudden it gets hot enough and lights off.
Yeah.
Now, someone said it may have been Solstice, they take off the back of their dryer. We just clean out what goes off the dryer, because, of course, we have a lint trap in it. Have you ever taken the back off of your dryer, Bruce?
Sometimes you have to. It depends on the actual dryer itself. Sometimes you have to take the whole back off to get that pipe off of the back.
Oh, okay.
And then also residual, lint kind of gets up in the air, especially when you're pulling your lint trap out, like every time you're cleaning it out, some of that poofs up in the air, and it gets back up under your dryer and up under in those nooks and crannies too.
Okay.
So and there's electrical wires up under there, remember, up inside your dryer. So it's good to check it.
Your dryer back. Yeah,
it's good to check it once or twice a year.
Remember the ones in laundromats or the dryers that it's the lint trap is long and angled and it sits up on top of your dryer? I hated those. You're pulling it out and it goes airborne. We got one that's inside and in the front, and I can vacuum down in that crevice real good too.
Yeah.
And that's good to do every time when you get done doing a large load of laundry. Take your vacuum cleaner, put the pipe attachment on it, and put the narrow nozzle on it. Go all the way down as far as you can go into that trap. And vacuum it all out, because what you're doing is you're taking any of that excess lint out of the dryer that could possibly ignite at a later point.
Yeah.
Teresa made a really good point. Never use lint from the dryer to make baby pillows. When we were kids and we're trying to make something for our high school, like our symbol was an anchor, all the moms saved us dryer lint, people, and that's what we used for stuffing. We would have never been able to afford batting. Holy cow.
Ask any prepper that wants to make a fire why you don't do that.
Right, okay. It has experience.
Yeah, because the lint that you get from your dryer is some of the best igniting material that you can get.
Yes.
You get a very little spark on that at all, and it's going to light right up.
That's what I use whenever I'm starting my fire. I lay my cross boards like this, like front to back, and then I lay a couple of boards over that horizontally, and then I put lint right in the bottom, and then I lay one more board over that. I strike or light the lint, and it climbs up and hits that middle board, and then I'll put little twigs like all around on it to get it going, and then it gets my bigger boards going. Yep. So, yep. All right. Well, I think we're right at that time. Does anybody have any last minute questions before we hop off of here?
Let me see. SOP said you could buy a tool to clean the whole vent pipe, to clean it out at the least 3 times a year. Yeah, that's a good one. And then I like that Teresa made the point, because we all know we can use lint for a fire starter. But back in the day, I had no reason to use, you know what I mean, a little sparking thing. But that's what we stuffed everything with. And to make, that's what you make kids' dolls with. Oh, geez. Yeah, Ginger Ninja, I do the same thing in a toilet paper tube. Yeah.
Yep, or old paper towel tubes cut into little portions. Lots of ways you can do it. You can also do a mixture of that and wax in an old ice tray. Lots of ways you can do it. All right. Well, Bruce, thank you again. Is there any last things that you need to say?
I think we covered just about everything. The other thing I did want to bring up is I did write down space heaters, because a lot of people don't think about that. If you have a plug that's giving you problems, it's always kicking off, do not for any reason plug in a space heater into that and then force that breaker to stay on, because what you're doing is you're creating a fire risk for yourself by doing that. A lot of people will take a penny and hold the breaker so that it will not kick off. And with the space heater, those get the wires so hot in the wall. That's a lot of times why the breaker will kick them off to cool them down.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the newer breakers actually can tell if there's heat on the line, and that's why they kick off, because they don't want that heat to melt through the insulator and catch the wall on fire. So there's a reason behind the breaker kicking off. It's trying to prevent your house from burning down. So don't put a penny there to hold it so that it stays on. Some people do that. We've gone into several fires. When I was going interior, we'd go in and we'd find out after we were doing the workover afterwards to make sure nothing was still smoldering under the stuff we had to rip down from the ceilings and everything.
Wow.
We'd go back and we'd find in the actual breaker box, you'd see a little penny sitting there holding a breaker open. You're like, oh, I know what happened. Does it take a fire investigator to figure that out?
Well, thank you so much, Bruce, for coming and doing part 2 of this. I think we've all learned something from it, and it's been so informative, and I just appreciate you taking the time to help us to understand more how to fight these various kinds of fires, and it'll help us react more quickly.
Yes.
Should that happen.
And the number one thing is don't worry about the crap that's in your house.
Yeah.
Get your body out of there, because you can't replace you. You can replace everything else that's in your house. Can't replace you. So get the hell out of there. Because you know what happens if the fire truck's coming to your house and some idiot's drunk and hits the fire truck, and now the fire truck can't get to your house.
Caitlin,
you don't want to rely on it.
That's right. Caitlin, we covered grease fires last week, so you can go to part 1, which is basically, I haven't put part 1 in there yet. It's just home fire preparedness, I think is what I called it. So you can go and check that out. That's last week's Preppers Portal, which was episode 19. So if you go and look for Preppers Portal episode 19, I'll try to link the 2 together on this. But anyway,
he went in detail on that, because that's our common one.
Yeah, and that was really great. He gave some great info that probably many of us hadn't heard before. I'm not saying all of us, but the majority of us probably hadn't heard before. So go and check that out. And Mouse Toes, again, thanks for being a fabulous co-host. I love you, my dear. All right, we'll see y'all next Wednesday, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, right here on Preppers Portal. Thanks for watching, guys. God bless. I love you. And remember to prep for it. Prep for it all. Bye, guys.